Hello, I'm your host Cole, and welcome to our short documentary about farming in ancient America. Today, we'll be exploring three powerful civilizations: the Incas, the Mayans, and the Aztecs. They've all developed advanced agricultural systems to survive and thrive in many different environments. Agriculture is the backbone of these societies. Without farming innovations, their cities, governments, and cultures, some things we've never developed in our world. We'll look at our four main topics, which is what was the climate and geography like in these countries, what was their main crops, what tools or techniques did they use, and how were their crops used. Let's start high in the mountains of South America with the Inca civilization. Over to you, Jake.
The Inca civilization lived along the Andes Mountains in South America, mostly in modern day Peru. Because they lived at very elevations, their environment created many microclimates. Temperature averaged around 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and the region received regular rainfall throughout the year. However, farming on steep mountainsides created huge challenges. To overcome this, the Incas developed one of their most famous farming techniques, terrace farming. Terraces were horizontal steps carved into mountainsides. These steps, called andenes, prevented soil erosion and created flat land where crops could grow. Each terrace was carefully designed based on altitude, sunlight, exposure, and drainage. These terraces were an incredible example of Incan engineering. The Incans grew a wide variety of crops. Their most important crop was potatoes. In fact, the Incan cultivated more than 3,000 different varieties of potatoes, each adapted for different climates and soils. Other crops included corn, beans, peppers, tomatoes, grains, and a big one, herbs and spices. The Incans were knowledgeable farmers. They practiced crop rotation, allowing soil to recover nutrients. They also used intercropping, planting beans and corn together. These beans added nitrogen to the soil, while the corn provided support for the beans to climb. In terms of tools, the Incans used simple but effective farming equipment. One important tool was the rocana, which worked as a modern-day hoe and was used to remove weeds. Another tool was the katana, a heavy club to break up soil before planting. The Incans also fertilized their soil using natural materials. Living near the coast gave them access to nitrogen-rich fertilizer from seabird droppings, which helped their crops grow. The crops grown by the Incans were extremely important to their society. Much of their harvest was stored so food would last throughout the year. Extra crops were also used as payment or reward for citizens who contributed labor to the state. Surpluses were also used during late ceremonies and community feasts that helped unite the population.
The Incas showed how innovation and careful planning allowed a civilization to farm successfully, even in harsh mountain environments. Next, we'll travel to the tropical forests of Central America to explore the Mayan agriculture.
The Maya civilization lived in parts of modern day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. Their environment included tropical forests, mountains, wetlands, and even mini deserts. The Maya depended heavily on seasonal summer rains. When these rains came, the soil became fertile and perfect for growing crops. However, if the rains failed, farming became very difficult, which many believe heavily contributed to the decline of the Mayan society. The most important crop in Mayan agriculture was corn, also called maize. Corn was so important that it became part of their culture and religion. Without the Mayans, corn may not have existed. Other important crops included beans, squash, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, chili peppers, and tomatoes. The Maya also grew crops such as cacao, avocados, cotton, papaya, and tobacco, although these were grown in smaller quantities. Cotton was especially useful because it allowed the Maya to produce textiles and clothing. The Maya used several creative farming techniques to make the most of the land. One method was terracing, which involved cutting small fields into hillsides and holding them in place while retaining walls. This reduced water runoff and soil erosion. Maybe the most important technique of Mayan agriculture was slash and burn farming. Farmers would cut down trees in the area, burn the remaining vegetation, and then plant crops in the nutrient-rich ash left behind. This process created very fertile soil for farming. The Maya also built canals and raised fields in wet areas. They dug soil out of watery areas to form small islands where crops could grow safely above the water. These canals also helped irrigate crops during dry periods. Another interesting aspect of Maya agriculture was their study of astronomy. The Maya carefully observed the stars and weather patterns to create detailed calendars that helped them determine the best times to plant and harvest crops. Mayan crops were used in many ways. Most crops were used as food for the population. However, crops were also used to trade. The Maya traded agricultural products such as products with coastal communities in exchange for seafood and fish. One especially important crop was cacao, which was used to make chocolate drinks for ceremonies and special events such as weddings. The Maya believed cacao was a gift from the gods.
With the Mayas' combined knowledge of astronomy and their environment, they are able to successfully farm in these dense forests with the unpredictable climate. Now, let's move over to central Mexico and learn about the Aztec farming system.
The Aztec civilization existed in central Mexico from about 1345 to 1521 AD. Their capital city, Tenochtitlan, was located near Lake Texcoco. The region had warm temperatures and seasonal rainfall, which helped create excellent growing conditions. The Aztecs' most important crops were known as the Three Sisters. These crops were maize, corn, beans, squash. These plants were grown together because they supported each other. Corn stalks provided structure for beans to climb. Beans restored nitrogen to the soil, and squash leaves shaded the ground to keep moisture in and prevent weeds. One of the most famous Aztec farming techniques was chinapas, often called floating gardens. Chinapas were artificial islands built in shallow lake water. Farmers layered mud, plants, and soil to create fertile farmland above the water. These floating farms were extremely productive and allowed the Aztecs to grow large amounts of food for their population. The Aztecs also used terrace farming in hilly areas. Similar to the Incas and Maya, terraces helped prevent erosion and created more space to grow crops. Aztec crops were used primarily for food, but some plants had other purposes as well. For example, the maguey cactus provided materials for making rope, cloth, roofing materials, and paper. Its sap was even used to create a fermented drink.
The Aztecs developed farming systems that used both land and water, allowing them to support one of the largest cities in the ancient world. Even though the Incas, Maya, and Aztecs lived in very different environments, they are all developed advanced agriculture systems that allow their civilizations to thrive. Thanks again for joining us for Farming the Ancient Americas.